Good morning. Well, that as I was mentioning, we're taking a class called Individual and Organizational Behavior, where we try to best understand how to manage people in the workplace. And as part of that, we're interviewing successful leaders in different industries and trying to learn best practices. So, with that being said, I was hoping that you could give us a little background on your name, the company that you worked for, and the position within that company.
Certainly, I'm happy to help. So my name is Jay Foley. I work for Cancer Treatment Centers of America, or at least that was my last executive position before I retired. I'm currently retired. And the position I held there that I served with was President and CEO of Cancer Treatment Centers of America in Tulsa.
So forgot to hit the start button on on the stopwatch. So describe your management. So how long were you with Cancer Treatment Centers?
I was with the Cancer Treatment Centers for about 11 years. I joined the organization as vice president of marketing, and over the course of that 11 years, progressed up through the executive ranks until I held that final position of president and chief executive officer.
Nice. So what were the size of your teams that you were directly managing?
At Cancer Treatment Center of America, I had a team of an executive team of 11 people, 11 executives. The entire hospital was about 850 employees strong, and of course, we had a hierarchy of management underneath those 11 executives.
Mm-hmm. Did you have any exceptionally positive or negative experiences that changed the way that you managed?
I think to answer that question, I really kind of had to go back and give a brief recap of what my executive growth was over my career. So I started out right after college working for Hertz Rent-A-Car, and I received a job at the very lowest level of the organization. I was washing cars. Over the course of 11 years with Hertz, I progressed through the organization and ended up in New England as the vice president of the New England zone. I spent 30 years in the car rental industry. So when I was with Hertz, I got recruited by National Car Rental, and I joined that organization as vice president of their Northeast region. Spent 15 years with National Car Rental, and then I was recruited to Tulsa, Oklahoma by Dollar Rent-A-Car as vice president of operations, and I progressed through that organization. So to talk about my management experience, one of the lessons I learned that was very important to me started out in Hertz when I was a young postgraduate washing cars. I did every job in that organization, and I washed cars, I rented cars, I did maintenance work on cars, and that put me in the grassroots of the organization. So one of the lessons I learned was how important it is for any leader to connect with everyone in their organization in order to be successful, because it takes a team, it takes a group effort in order for any organization to work and to be successful. And if you lose sight of where what I call the rubber hits the road, not to use a poor car analogy, but where the rubber hits the road, your customers interact with the frontline individuals, and that's where they hear what the customer wants. And to the extent that you're satisfying customer needs, you're going to be successful.
We had a really great speaker who you actually know, Sean Copeland, and he had mentioned that one of the practices that he's integrated into his daily routine is he doesn't take any meeting before 10 a.m. because he knows that the 7 to 10 a.m. hours, his brain is really going. It's a creative space for him, and he wants to just focus on his work. I was wondering, do you have any routines that you discovered over the course of your leadership tenure that positively impacted your day?
Yeah, so Sean and I had that in common. I was kind of an early riser. I made a habit of always trying to be the first one into work. It allowed me time to process, like Sean. He was exactly right. When you get in before the phones are ringing and all the hubbub happens, you get to kind of set your day, to plan your day. Planning is extremely important for an executive. So those early morning hours were very important to me. And that habit carried throughout my entire career. It's something that allowed me to really, be able to be firing all cylinders when things started happening, and to have my feet firmly grounded on what the priorities of the day were. So you never want to lose sight of what you should be working on. Sometimes it's easy for executives and managers to migrate towards what they like to do. But if you're alone in your workspace and you know the mission of the company, and you're able to figure out what you're going to do to drive that mission, you make sure you take care of the critical tasks, not necessarily the tasks you like to do.
Interesting. Another thing that he said as a routine that he found successful, not just for him, but for the organization, was he had all of his managers, they had to meet with their employees once a week for 1 hour and not talk about work. And his big thing was relationship building. He worked in banking, so obviously relationship building is really important for that industry. Did you have anything like any of those routines or any of those requirements for your manager's setup?
Yeah, so relationships is important, and team meetings are extraordinarily important. I'll tell you an example in the hospital business. In hospital medicine, there's a handoff when one shift of employees, nurses, and doctors leave their patients. They do a handoff to the next group coming in. Even before that, in car rental, we had daily lineups. Every day, a manager was required to meet with their group, their employee group, and go over a checklist. And the checklist was kind of their dashboard. What are we doing? What's happening today? Any significant events? What do we need to focus on? Are there any people that are absent? Do we need to cover any bases? What are the critical paths? So that's on the business side. On the relationship side, extremely important. When I was in car rental and I was running operations for cities, I'll give you an example. In Chicago, I was city manager of Chicago O'Hare Airport, a huge airport. We had 7 terminals. I made it a point that when I got in early in the morning, I'd set my schedule, do my priorities, like I said, before anybody showed up. As soon as the first shift was all settled in their locations, before the flight started to arrive, I made rounds. I jumped on a bus. I went to every single one of the 7 terminals, went to every single one of the 9 counters in those 7 terminals. And I just talked with the people. And it wasn't about business. It wasn't about, who's going to be here today. It was about, do you have what you need? And how was your evening? And what did you do over the weekend? And getting to know something about their family and what their likes and dislikes were. It was important because when things happen and you can motivate an employee by virtue of recognizing when their birthday was or what family event they had, and they just had a baby, was very, very important. Relationships, I'll give you another example. For my entire car rental career, I wrote birthday cards and anniversary cards to every employee. So on a given day, on Monday, I would come in. I know all the birthdays and anniversaries for that week, and I would write a card for all of them, personal note and a signature on it, and make sure it got delivered to them on their birthday or on their anniversary. So it really kind of connected me with the employees on a level, because oftentimes an executive will be seen as somebody who's aloof and remote, and I never wanted to be perceived as that.
Yeah, that's pretty good. When we did the Clifton Strength Finders as part of this course, our professor, Dr. Buller, wanted us to do the Strength Finders assessment to see kind of where our strengths were. And relationship building was nowhere in my top 5. I've kind of been subjecting myself more to that as like a young supervisor, manager, just the importance of that, where I kind of still come into work and think I'm the worker bee and just put my head down and do what needs to be done, and not realizing the importance of bringing the team together and finding those moments. So it's been interesting to hear you echo that. Sean's echoed that. Jack Grady, who I interviewed, has also mentioned that as well. That's
I will say this. I will say this, Alec, is a comment. You need to be purposeful about it. You need to find time or do, like I did birthday cards and anniversaries on my schedule, because high-powered A-type executives will often be so motivated by the business, they just charge through. Right. So something as simple as, I was criticized when I got some feedback from my executive team. I was criticized by responding to email very abruptly. They thought I was being curt and abrupt. And I made it a point when I would send an email, I would start off with, good morning, Alex, or, how are you doing? It was something just to kind of soften the blow, and then ask what the content was, what I was trying to achieve. So it's a habit you can make, but you have to be purposeful about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And intentional. Like, it's definitely gonna be something that I'm gonna have to set it in my schedule, set reminders, and go against the grain in that regard for me, so I can be better at that. So I'm going to skip to question 8. How do you motivate your team?
I think motivation starts with purpose, and purpose is found in what the mission of the organization is. You motivate your team by recognizing when they're doing things that really speak to and achieve that mission, and course correcting when they may be running astray of that mission. I'll give you an example. At Cancer Treatment Centers of America, the mission was called the Mother Standard. And the Mother Standard was you treat every customer and each other as you would treat your mother. So in cancer patients, which is a horrible disease and a horrible journey to be on, you want to make sure you address that patient as if they were your mother. Be caring, make sure you get them what they want. And it was very easy to interact with the employees at Cancer Treatment Centers of America, the stakeholders, and see when they were fulfilling that mission and when they may have been falling somewhat short. And it was a simple conversation. It's a real easy conversation when they did something great because you could applaud and celebrate. And when they weren't, it was a conversation about, hey, let's discuss what just occurred and see what we would do again in the future if that was really the mother standard. So it was such a positive environment that it was easy to motivate. So I think on a couple of things. One, personally connecting with the employee is important, like we talked about. Number two, being mission focused and making sure you keep your eye on the ball on that mission. And number three, I think it's just the way you communicate. I think it's important for a leader to be vulnerable. We're all humans, and showing your vulnerability and something about yourself also lets the people you're leading know that you have faults too, and being able to accept that and demonstrate that, I think is also important.
Excellent. Question 13. What advice would you give to an upcoming leader that you wish someone had shared with you?
Yeah, I think one of the hard lessons I learned early in life was not, or early in my career, was not seeking out and asking for help and assistance. So I'll give you an example. When I became vice president of the New England zone at Hertz, the vice presidents were brought to the headquarters group in Madison Avenue in New York, and they had to make a presentation to the chairman and CEO on a quarterly basis. And my first quarterly meeting, I had prepared information, details on the financial performance of the organization, but really I hadn't rehearsed it. I didn't find out what the venue was like. I didn't ask other VPs, what to expect and what to anticipate going in there. So I went in cold and I was flat-footed. I stood up. I kind of froze. I didn't present my material that really demonstrated how the zone was operating, how the city performed. I didn't talk about highlights. I just kind of showed the financial performance and said, well, there it is, expecting to get questions. And it was a flat performance. So after that, I learned to rely on others, and don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to know that you don't have all the answers. To ask people, hey, how do I do this? Can I rehearse with you? Can you partner with me on certain things? I think that was a really important lesson.